So as I said in the previous lecture, the research report has 5 chapters in a thesis: introduction, literature review, method, results, discussion. And you might have a 6th part, conclusion. I am not going to look in detail into literature review because that is going to be the next lecture. So let us talk about the method. Now, what do you talk about in the method chapter, that is chapter 3? You are going to begin by saying, what is your research design? Is your research design qualitative or quantitative? Is your research design cross-sectional, that is, you are gathering data at a given time or over a period of time? If you gather data over a period of time with the same participants, say 2 years, 3 years, even 20 years, then it becomes longitudinal study. Is your research a survey or is your research case study? Survey involves a large sample and it sort of examines what is prevalent there, whereas case studies go in detail in terms of exploration. So that is research design. Then you describe your participants. We will talk about more in detail about these sections. Now, the intention here is to give you an overall view. So the second section in method chapter is participants. Who are your participants? What is your population of study? Who are your sample? How are you going to sample these people from your general population? And thirdly, what is the instrument? What are the instruments that you are going to use to gather data? Instruments do not here refer to hardware stuff, but in terms of questionnaire, interview guide, and all that we are going to explain in the future. And procedure. Fourth element in the method chapter is procedure. How are you going to really recruit these participants? How are you going to approach them? How are you going to use your instrument to gather data? Are you the one going to gather data, or you're going to get someone else to do that for you? And finally, data analysis. How are you going to analyze your data? Now, these elements build up the chapter of method, and in fact this whole series of lectures is about this chapter, because we are going to talk about the elements of sampling, we are going to talk about the elements of gathering data, we are going to talk about data analysis. And so hold on. And in the results chapter, you are going to divide your results chapter into sections that correspond to the objectives. Take your objective one by one. What did you find? In terms of your data, you present them. And that is it. You might want to give detail about your participants right at the beginning and summarize your findings at the end of this chapter of results. Now, in the 5th chapter, discussion. What is the implication of your finding in terms of your literature review? So in a sense, discussion chapter goes back to the literature review and relates the known knowledge with the new knowledge. What have you added in terms of your finding to the body of human knowledge? Are there contradictions between what you found and what was already said? Are there parallels? And if there are contradictions, why could this be? Discuss. Well, are there possibilities that in fact the population was different? Maybe therefore we are shedding more light on this finding, or the method was different, and discuss. And finally, you might come up with certain conclusions. You might make proposals about future research. And sometimes this section is called recommendations. But these recommendations should flow from limitations that you have seen in your study. And therefore you're saying, you see, when I did my research, I did this way and these are the findings. But if someone else were to do it, then they could do it in a better way and maybe they will find more relevant data. And therefore research continues. And I said, science is cumulative.